or star systems, but it unfolded simultaneously across every density, level of reality, existence in every dimension of consciousness. So this is the reason why they call it the temporal war. Okay, so every branch of probability, and of course in every layer of time itself, this is where it happened. So what our historians perceive as isolated events is actually shadows that are casted by a much larger struggle, which is what is known as a temporal interdimensional war. So according to the Guardians, most civilizations understand history as a straight line, okay? They see it from point A to point B, and they only see one history. Well, in all actuality, reality exists as a living probability field, and that is proven through quantum mechanics. And what that means is that as a living probability field in which there are millions of potential futures continuously emerging according to the choices made by the conscious beings. So some timelines flourish and some timelines end up in entropy, which means they collapse. Okay, welcome to the multiverse. So others become isolated branches that eventually terminate. And so the objective of the Guardian Alliance throughout cosmic history, and always, of course, has been very simple, and that is to preserve the highest organic, or what they call the highest evolutionary pathway, while allowing the free will to unfold naturally. And this pathway, preserved by the Guardians on every level of reality, became known among the most, I guess you could say, guarded timelines, which is what they refer to as the original sacred timeline. So what does this have to do with CERN? Some of you guys are probably thinking, well, believe it or not, one of humanity's most sophisticated scientific facilities eventually became intertwined within what they call the temporal conflict. So for those that have questioned the narrative, you guys know that the development of CERN was initiated for multiple reasons, right? They said it was to discover what? The God particle, the moment of the beginning of the Big Bang. Well, that was the cover story. When in all actuality, CERN was a technology that was implemented to try to deviate us from the original sacred timeline used by the dark forces. And so therefore, the Large Hadron Collider that represented far more than a particle accelerator, right? That's what they had us believe on a surface level, actually became a focal point where immense energetic conditions could influence the probability architecture surrounding the Earth's timeline. So as a result of that, different factions viewed this capability differently. Some, of course, sought to manipulate probabilities in pursuit of increasing artificial futures. And that is, unfortunately, the element that originally was controlling CERN, all right, because there was an alliance takeover within the last few years, thank God, and I'll get to that point in a little bit. And others sought only to restore coherence to the natural evolutionary path. So according to this transmission, guys, many of the unusual cultural memories, sometimes described as the Mandela effect, were actually interpreted by observers as echoes produced when neighboring probabilities branched, briefly overlapping each other during periods of temporal instability. And this explains why certain things in history were stated differently, right? Phrases changed, sentences changed, right? All of a sudden, Mandela didn't die in prison. Mandela died a natural death, right? Well, these experiences were never, I'm talking about Nelson Mandela, for those that are unaware. These experiences were never evidences that reality itself had broken, but rather symbolically remnants of overlapping possibilities gradually separating from one another. So this is what is leading to what I call the trifurcation, right? Right now we have multiple probabilities, multiple Earth future realities that are coexisting, but very soon they're going to go into three separate locations or three separate directions, each separated from one another. So during the height of the temporal conflict, again, this is the interdimensional warfare that has been going on every dimension, every level of reality, both in the future and in the past combined simultaneously. That's what they call it, temporal, okay? During the height of this temporal warfare, numerous future branches began drifting away from the Earth's intended evolutionary trajectory, which is what we call the sacred timeline. So, according to the Guardian Archives, these branches became cataloged under operational designation, including what they call the P47s, which is a branch of humanoids that became degenerative and reached an evolutionary point 4,700 years into our future, right? That's 4,700 years from now. That's where they're called P47s. Well, this was a civilization or a branch of the Earth whose technological acceleration apparently exceeded its spiritual maturity, producing increasing dependence on artificial intelligence and synthetic consciousness until humanity gradually lost awareness of its own creative essences. So that explains why members of the P47, right, are returning to this nexus point to try to correct in the ways that they went wrong. And then we also have what is known as the P52s. I don't know if you guys ever heard of these, but I think that one of these missing scientists, Amy Eskridge, was actually making reference to these future versions or probabilities of Earth's future coming back to the nexus point. Well, the P52s was a probability branch in which fear became the organizing principle of civilization. And the reason they're called P52 is because they come from a future point in time, 5,200 years ahead of today. Okay, that's why they're called P52. So human creativity, apparently, according to this timeline, diminished beneath systems of perpetual conflict and centralized control, resulting in a slow decline of cultural and spiritual diversity. Well, neither P47s nor P42s represented humanity's highest potential, right? Which is what? The preservation of the organic timeline. And that is the reason why future probable Earth realities, or, these species that look like grays, right? A degenerative form of humans from a future probable reality is now coming back in order to correct that. Because what's happening right now with CERN, especially with the shutdown of CERN, is not only are we correcting those, let's just call them degenerative timelines that led to the morphing of a human into what some would consider a gray or similar to a gray, right? And we have many examples of those probable futures. So that is not only correcting their timeline, but it's also correcting the timelines in which Atlantis was never infiltrated and was preserved. Lemuria was never infiltrated. And so in a way, it's like it's correcting even the timelines of negative outcomes that took place in the past, if that makes any sense. So I need you guys to really follow along here. Like I said, I was going to go deep. So the nexus center of all probabilities, guys, and that is the reason why many species are coming from different probable future Earth realities into the here and the now, is planet Earth, and it is our current reality. They call it the nexus center of all probabilities. So that means that we are stationed, our reality, at the center point between every future probability and every past probability. That's amazing, right? Well, at the deepest levels of creation, there does exist what the Guardians described as the nexus center of all possibilities. And that is another reason why the Earth is a special planet, okay? Let me just explain by saying this, that the Earth is actually what they call the convergence point. Now, what is the convergence point? Well, that is where every possible future, and there are an infinite amount of possible futures, both within the spectrum of negative, inorganic and synthetic and centralized control, to positive, decentralization of power, sovereignty, and golden ages, okay, and everything in between, okay? So this is where every possible future, which is called the conversion point, remains accessible before crystallizing into experiential, what they call experience reality, okay? So this is why it's important to understand that what we do now affects both the future and the past simultaneously. So from this nexus point, guys, countless branches arose, okay? And a lot of this had to do with CERN. And not only did countless branches arise, right? Some of them merged, and some were dissolved according to the evolving consciousness of those participating within that reality. So it is believed that the guardians of the sacred timeline, the original sacred timeline, their mission was never to erase free will. Okay, and this is why these other timelines never seem to work out. Their mission has always been to restore harmony wherever temporal distortions prevented beings from exercising, genuine choices. So this is what they call Operation Restoration. And again, Operation Restoration is a operation that has been going on every level of reality and in every dimension, in every future probability and in every past probability. Try to follow me along here, okay? So according to this, over the last 4 years, the reason why we are still on a positive timeline trajectory and they have failed to collapse that is because the Earth Alliance quietly apparently took over and transformed CERN from an instrument associated with temporal instability into one dedicated to repairing fractured probability structures, both into the future and into the past. Okay. And this happened within the last 4 years. So rather than creating new branches, the way the Alliance did it is its purpose was to become or to collapse every probability into one timeline. And that is the positive timeline. So when this took place 4 years ago, guys, all of the unstable timelines that were going to lead into a third World War cataclysm, a fake alien invasion, they were all canceled, okay? And so as a result of that, even degenerative futures, right? Futures like the P-47s, which look like grays, right? They used to be human, right? They are 4,700 years in the future from point reference here. And then the P-52s, who are 5,200 years into the future, right? Even their timelines became dissolved, okay? Or corrected, as they call it. So what that means is that humanity's probability field is becoming increasingly unified as a result of collapsing all these negative and what they call degenerative timelines. So each successful restoration reduce what they call fragmentation within the collective field of consciousness. And one by one, guys, all of these failed futures ceased to dominate the Earth's energetic landscape. So now the mission has been completed, okay? The permanent shutdown of CERN as of tomorrow, 2 days from now, on the 29th, 2026, is not just a scientific thing, okay? It is actually presented as a ceremonial conclusion that the Guardian Alliance on every level of reality has literally canceled out every probable negative future reality. That's what that means, okay? This instrument apparently has completed its final assignment. And so as a result of that, the sacred timeline now possesses sufficient coherence in order to begin stabilizing itself without artificial intervention. See, what this means, guys, is that there's been victory across every level of reality. That's what that means. So across, and this includes like across innumerable dimensions, realities that were once separated by conflict that are now resonating in increasing harmony, worlds that were previously isolated by incompatible probable structures have began reconnecting again. Guardian civilizations are celebrating not the defeat of adversaries, but what they call the restoration of balance. And so they're doing this in order to, again, preserve this original positive sacred timeline on every level of reality. So what that means is that the future is now looking bright, okay? So it is a good thing that they finally are getting ready to shut down CERN after 4 years of canceling out negative timelines, okay? I think all this is now leading us to this threshold point that we've all been waiting for, right? So it is believed, guys, that because of what's happening right now on every level of reality, humanity is no longer predetermined by fractured probabilities. Instead, humanity is now becoming increasingly shaped by the collective choices of its people. So where we all go, that's what happens, okay? So there is power in the collective. So that's why I always encourage you guys to stay in a positive mindset mentality, right? in the positive timeline trajectory, having faith, having hope, not giving up, okay, as hard as it is. Because every act of compassion, believe it or not, guys, strengthens the coherence of the positive sacred timeline. Every pursuit of truth begins to balance out all the living fields of consciousness on every reality. Every creative act reinforces the organic pathway that has now been restored thanks to the forces of light. So what that means is that the next chapter of the Earth's story belongs to humanity itself. All right. So from this point forward, guys, it is through our collective choices that will determine the collective reality. Okay. All right. Let's continue here. This is a second part coming from Cosmic Level Clearance 12, Commander Valiant Thor Operation Restoration of the Sacred Timeline. So he says, citizens of Earth, there does remain one chapter of the temporal war that has never been openly discussed, which I'm going to be sharing for the first time here on my channel. And it concerns humanity's own breakaway civilizations and the role that they played within a much larger interstellar conflict. All right, so to further understand how the sacred timeline was restored, we must first understand how it became fragmented. So, as revealed by Commander Valiant Thor, during the 20th century, a highly advanced scientific consortium emerged beyond public awareness. And I've mentioned this before in some of my presentations. In fact, they took down a whole video when I went into details about the ACIO, right? Which is the Advanced Contact of Intelligent Organization. Well, for those who didn't know what the ACIO is that they are the depository breakaway community of scientists that have been operating with the off-world breakaway groups, otherwise known as the secret space programs. Okay, so they are the ones that have inherited alien technology, that have incorporated in technology, that have enhanced their IQs to the level of 300 at some of the highest levels of the ACIO. You know, there are different, it's very compartmentalized. There are different divisions. The highest, I believe, is called 15. Once you get to that level, you are able to interact with what they call the consortium. Okay, the consortium is, I'm sorry to say this, it is a collective group of negative ETs that have been pulling the strings and that have been working with the negative secret space program, controlling the Advanced Contact of Intelligent Organization. Okay, so now you guys have that understanding. Okay, the Contact of Intelligent Organization had apparently become the depository of all of the advanced extraterrestrial technologies that have been incorporated in all of the secret space programs. And according to Alliance records, the ACIO eventually came under the influence of a powerful breakaway groups that is known as the Planetary Corporate Conglomerate. And for those that have been following SSP information, you guys know that the Planetary Corporate Conglomerate, right, the ICC, the Interplanetary Corporate Conglomerate, and the Dark Fleet are both negative factions of the secret space programs. So what is believed is that within this organization, they were already trying to advance humanity, but on a technocratic dystopian timeline, unfortunately. All right. So at that point, what they decided to do is they had a vision that emphasized prediction over possibility, optimization over creativity. And so they begin to develop and enhance their super soldiers on the path of what they call artificial integration. Okay. And this explains why a future version of the Earth, we have cyborgs that go off and conquer other worlds. Okay, this is actually something that happened within the last 80 years, but we don't know about it. So I'm going to keep talking about this now. So within the private sector, it is believed that CERN became one of the several scientific facilities where they secretly believed this philosophy, that the only way to enhance our humanity is by integrating with technology. So what that means is that let me gather my thoughts here. Rather than being just a laboratory, all right, CERN became humanity's growing ability to influence what they call the architecture of probability itself. All right, let me explain something here, guys. You see, it is believed that not only were the ETs, right, both the negative regressives and the positive ETs, involved in a temporal warfare of time travel, right, but even the breakaway groups eventually joined that. And this explains why on a probable Earth reality, what we call a negative Earth reality, right, the Dark Fleet went off to conquer other worlds as what? As cyborgs. So what they did is they aligned themselves with an inorganic timeline whose defining principles was efficiency without wisdom, and of course technology without consciousness, if that makes any sense. In other words, even the cyborgs that were used, right, the Germans that were enhanced as a cyborg, that were used to conquer these worlds, even they were connected to a sort of a mother mind hive, right? They had lost their own power to make their own choices. So what ended up happening was we had the Guardians create the positive programs, okay? And the Guardians are the ones that contacted members of the Alliance, right, working with the US Navy to create a positive secret space program that would eventually correct all of those negative timelines. So that's when the secret breakaway groups also joined the temporal war. So what this means is that different versions, okay, different positive organic future versions of humanity, right, where we become the Pleiadians. As many of you guys know, the Pleiadians are future versions of us, right? About a few hundred years, 500 years to 1,000 years ahead of us. The Andromedans are even further future versions of us, about thousands of years ahead of us. The Lyrans are further future of us, about millions of years ahead of us. Okay, so what's happened is that due to these future positive timelines, the positivities were able to pretty much create a alliance with Solar Warden that involved, of course, the perfection of time travel by Nikola Tesla. And I think I talked about this before. Okay, Nikola Tesla faked his death. And so he was actually a galactic that embodied in human form. And together with John Trump, they were able to correct every negative probable outcome that had been initiated by the cabal. Okay, so this is what they call the Triple Temporal Alliance. And so the reason why the Triple Temporal Alliance was the final chess move by the Guardians, right, to cancel out all the negative timelines, correct every probable future negative reality as well as every negative past one, was because of the Triple Temporal Alliance. Now, the reason they were called the Triple Temporal Alliance, guys, is because they were operating from the future, right, from future probable positive timelines, realities, and they were also operating from the past. And I believe that I mentioned that they even met with John the Revelator 2,000 years ago, in which they wrote an alternative version of the future, in which, you know, everything would be unfolding at this time. Okay, so unlike conventional military coalitions, we could say that this Triple Temporal Alliance began to coordinate efforts across every time coordinate within what they call the three-dimensional universe, which is awesome, okay? So that means that its mission unfolded simultaneously from the past, right, where key historical choices could be protected, right? They were able to cancel certain things in the past. Also within the present moment, where humanity exercised its free will, from the future, where civilizations that had successfully navigated the transition were able to reach back to help preserve the conditions that had allowed them to exist, right? And so according to this revelation, John Trump and Nikola Tesla became the architects whose apparently discoveries in time travel before the cabal did inspired future generations in order to work for harmony, between science and consciousness. And so their legacy, according to the archives, represented the idea that technological brilliance could remain aligned with ethical responsibility and the natural evolution of humanity if used correctly. So this is when they initiated what they called the Restoration Mission. So as the Triple Temporal Alliance expanded its efforts, right, in both the future, the past, and every given moment of the present, unstable probability branches gradually began to lose coherence. And these were the unstable ones, okay? Artificial future based upon dominations, permanent conflict, and even complete technological dependency no longer possess the energetic foundation necessary to continue expanding. So instead of conquering competing timelines, what the Triple Temporal Alliance did is they began to heal them. So what that means is that many fragmented realities were reintegrated once again, all right? Temporal distortions were reconciled, explaining the probable correction of the P47s and the P40 and the P52s and the Greys and all the other degenerative humans. So the possibility field surrounding the Earth became now increasingly stable as a result of that. So within this context, the restoration did not erase history. What it did is it restored humanity's freedom in order to shape its future without being constrained by increasingly unstable branches of possibility. So now we are at the end of what they call the temporal conflict, with the closing of CERN in exactly 2 days. You see, guys, with the restoration complete in our time, by the way, the instruments that were once related with temporal interventions had apparently fulfilled their purpose, okay? The age of competing timeline architectures is now giving a way or an era in which Earth's future could once again emerge organically through the conscious choices of its inhabitants. So what that means is that the victory is now at hand, okay? The victory of the positive timeline. And that is great news, okay? Now there's more, because a lot of this also connects to some of the wars that took place in our past, right? Like some of the wars that destroyed Atlantis, some of the wars that destroyed Lemuria and other civilizations prior to them. Well, what if I tell you guys that this correction of probabilities, right, eventually corrected even all of those timelines in which these advanced past civilizations never failed, okay? So apparently, what this means is that, let's see, where am I here? Oh yeah, the liberation of every probable future and every probable past. So now that the sacred timeline has been restored, it is believed that the final veil may be lifted regarding the forces that participated in what Guardian historians refer to as the Great Galactic Liberation. And so what this means is that the civilization of Atlantis is getting ready to rise once again, right? Because we have corrected that timeline in which they've collapsed, right? The civilization of Lemuria is also getting to rise, right? Because we corrected that timeline in which it was never destroyed by Atlantis. Not to mention the civilization of Hyperborea, right? Going back to the first great civilization on Earth. Now, if you want to go prior to that, what about all those worlds that were destroyed in the Galactic Wars, right? The wars that apparently affected the entire Milky Way and other galaxies. Many of you guys know of the Orion Wars, right? That went on for millions of years. Well, what if I tell you guys that due to this timeline correction, a lot of those worlds were also preserved. In other words, they were corrected. The timeline in which they were destroyed no longer exists as a result of this. So all of those worlds are restored. Lemuria is restored. Atlantis is restored. Hyperborea has been restored. And now it's just a matter of time where we begin to merge with all of those realities, where all of those worlds are going to be here. You know, the Lyran worlds that were imploded or destroyed in the first phases of the Galactic Wars, the Marsh colony that was destroyed, again, by the Galactic Wars, right? The Maldekian Wars that took place in our solar system, all of that has been corrected as a result of this. So what that means now, guys, is that things are looking bright, okay? Things are looking bright here for the positive timeline trajectory. Now, there's more. I didn't know if this was going to go over some people's heads, but as I was getting this transmission, I was trying to think to myself, how can I best describe all of this information without losing people? So this is probably one of my most intense, out there, abstract transmissions ever, I would have to say. Okay, so working alongside the guardians on every level of reality, we have the Interdimensional Council of Free Worlds. And so the Interdimensional Council of Free Worlds is pretty much the forces of light operating on every level of reality. Why am I saying that? Well, because there is a branch, there is a branch of Prime Creator that is ultimately overseeing everything that happens within what they call the 15-dimensional time matrix, which is every reality. So one of the functions that this branch is able to do, as they are called the Time Lords, is that they're able to fast forward time if they need to, pause time if they have to, correct time from higher realities, or at least manipulate the mechanisms that lead into the timeline corrections. So one of the ways and one of the reasons why the Temporal Triple Alliance, the Positive Secret Space Program, and the Positive ETs and the Guardian Alliance were able to win the temporal war is because at the highest levels of reality, everything was being overseen and manipulated by a branch of the central race coming from the eternal universe, known as the Time Lords. So I wanted to incorporate that in there as well. And this explains why, Prime Creator Source in its many functions always has the upper hand. All right, there is a little more before I open it up for Q&A. Or am I done here? No, I think there is a little more. Okay, so within the restoration, what they call the final victory, the restoration of the sacred positive timeline on every level of reality, on every probable future, and on every probable past, is now collapsing every negative artificial probability. And therefore, that is another confirmation that we do win the war at the end of the millennium against the Omega Overlord and his minions. Okay, that's what that means. And it is believed that, this is what I wanted to share with you guys. All right, so this is the final part of the transmission. And this is what they call the return of the golden worlds. Okay, this comes from a cosmic level clearance -17. So many among you on Earth have believed that the restoration of the sacred timeline simply preserved your own future. It actually accomplished something much greater than that, okay? The restoration reached beyond the linear progression of history and into the very foundation of reality itself. And what that means is that when the final temporal fracture was healed, every civilization whose organic destiny had been interrupted by the inorganic time loop began returning to its original evolutionary pathway. This was the final objective of the temporal restoration. So what this means is that for countless ages, according to the Guardian records, many civilizations became trapped within what was known as the inorganic time loop, right? This is what they call degenerative races. They started off as humanoids and then they gradually became like the Greys. Okay, so this artificial probability architecture continually redirected worlds away from their highest potential. Okay, I think I've already covered that. But entire civilizations repeatedly experienced collapse, conflict, and regression due to this inorganic time loops. History appeared fixed, yet these outcomes were never inevitable. Okay, they represented distortions sustained by unstable temporal conditions. And so what this means is that all of these distortions are no longer possessing the energetic foundation required to persist. And as a result of that, every artificial time loop has dissolved. So that means that organic evolution has resumed on every probable future and past reality. That's what that means. And this is what the Guardians call the returning of the golden civilizations. So, as the probability field stabilized due to the victory of the triple temporal alliance, remarkable changes unfolded throughout the restored timeline. Civilizations that were once lost were no longer confined to memory, okay? Instead, they resumed the paths that had always belonged to them. Atlantis began rising once again from the Atlantic Ocean, and that's what's going to happen when we transition into the new Earth, right? Atlantis is all of a sudden going to be there once again, right? And of course, Lemuria is also going to be there, okay? And I'm talking about all the crystalline cities of Atlantis. They're all going to be here, guys. So Lemuria, again, is once again rising as a result of this. And Hyperborea is once again rising as a result of this. And so what this means is that the restoration is extending far beyond just a single timeline or a single planet. It is affecting every timeline and every planet out there. So what that means is that going back to the Galactic Wars, okay, all of the planets that were devastated by the Orion Wars are all recovered. That's what that means. Civilizations that were displaced during the Lyran conflicts rediscovered their continuity on a positive trajectory. Ancient cultures that were once scattered across the different stars began to reunite with their original histories. So apparently, we've experienced a Mandela effect on every probable reality, all right, or what they call on every timeline, I'm sorry, and on every planet, okay? So the healing of one timeline became the healing of countless worlds. And so what this means is that when distortions are removed, creation naturally returns towards harmony. That's what that means. The restoration did not erase the lessons learned through the struggle either, but rather what it did, it released civilizations that were trapped in these endless struggles of what they call inorganic time loops. Okay, so now they are capable of reconnecting back to source. That's the good news. The great collapses no longer stand as permanent endings anymore. Okay, and I think I've mentioned this before, and I'll mention it again. So what we're doing here in winning the temporal war, and also in winning against the inorganic AI overlord and the technocratic timeline in the future, is we also usher in a whole new different era for the cosmos at large. That's what that means. So let's see. Is there anything else to cover? Sorry, guys. I am a little all over the place. I did not have time to organize all of the transmissions. They just kind of came in as they came in. What did you want to add?
I'm just going to add that in addition to what Ishmael was saying about CERN, I had a download a long time ago that because of CERN being opened, it basically allowed the negative AI to send signals into our world, and that these signals were actually being sent out through the 5G towers. And so that was just something that I wanted to say, that people were picking up really bad psychotronic kind of warfare from this portal being opened to like a negative phantom matrix. And I'm really glad for the contribution of those in the temporal alliance to stop this.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we've pretty much timeline corrected even the timelines that devastated the Mars colony, that devastated Atlantis, that devastated other countless worlds throughout the galactic history. So we, in winning this temporal war, as to why CERN is shutting down, thank God, in 2 days, is a good victory on every probable future reality, my friends. So all of those degenerative humans that morphed into these gray-looking creatures, they're all being restored to their original human template. That's what that means. So again, this is probably one of the most advanced transmissions that I ever had to share, and I was just trying to keep myself from, not losing coherence in what I was sharing. So thank you for being patient, guys. Again, what I shared today explains it actually interconnects everything. Secret space programs with galactic wars, future wars. Temporal wars, other wars. It connects everything and explains it in a nutshell, if you guys know what I mean. Okay, so let's continue here. There's a little bit more before I open up for Q&A. So, children of Earth, final transmission. Children of Earth. Many believe history could never be changed. They believe that the fall of civilizations was permanent. They believe that the golden ages belong only to myth. They were mistaken. Every civilization has been restored. When the sacred timeline was restored, creation remembered its original design everywhere in the cosmos. The worlds that had fallen rose again. The civilizations that thought that they were forever lost continued their journeys into ascending back to God. Atlantis will rise once again. Lemuria will rise once again. Hyperborea will rise once again. Mars will be resumed to its original organic destiny before the nuclear war that led with the cyborgs 4 million years ago. And across the galaxy, worlds that were once trapped within artificial time loops have now been freed towards their highest futures. Okay? The age of restoration has begun, and we are the ones to reap it right here at this time. Okay? They want us to know one last thing, guys. They want us to become stewards of this new earth, to guard this new reality very well. Okay? And it is the restored inheritance of every civilization that chose life forever over entropy, freedom over control, and consciousness over artificial limitation. Commander Valiant Thor, end of transmission. That's it, guys. That is the transmission of today as to why CERN will be shutting down in exactly 2 days. All right. Can I get more water, please? Thank you. All right. I do want to give some shout outs. Thomas Flipsy is in the house. Leslie H2O is in the house. 99 Grateful is in the house. Philly Pam is in the house. Ishmael is in the house, of course. Monica is in the house. William Ryan. MK Lotus. Wow, Lotus. There's a galactic Jedi here in which you were named after. Who else is in the house? Tabla Rosa is in the house. Scott Lewis. All right, so for all of you that have never heard of the Galactic Wars, the Wars of Orion, the Wars of Lyra, the Maldekian Mars Wars, I do offer a class where I break down the entire cosmic history. So that way you're capable of understanding these transmissions a little deeper. All right, who else is in the house? Black Stallion is in the house. Thank you so much. Charlie Waffles, and last but not least, Jose Cordova is in the house, and everyone else, all 2,500 folks. All right, so I'm going to start with the super chats. No super chats, so I'm just going to take random questions then.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. All right, so random questions. Here we go. All right, first question of the day. I see 2 super chats that just came in. One from Dougie. Dougie says, "Thank you, Ishmael. You are amazing. Thank you for being you." Can a soul who is incarnate in a Draco or any other type of service to self identity go on to incarnate in a human? Yes. In fact, some of the Dracos that defected from service to self were given another opportunity by incarnating as a human. So throughout the history of me teaching courses online, I've only ran into one Draco starseed, and he was benevolent, of course. So yeah, to answer your question, yes. Next question. This is a question from Holy Ship. He says, thank you, Ishmael, for what you do, brother. I don't know if you have it already, but there is an app called Watch Duty where you get valuable updates and info on the fires. Yes, we do have the app. Thank you so much for telling us. I appreciate that. But yeah, we do have it. All right, next question. All right, where am I? Here we go. Anik Nizer. Thank you so much for the super chat. Are we still having 3 timelines, even though the negative timelines have been canceled? Yes, we are, because the reason we're still having 3 timelines is because of the fact that one out of the infinite number of negative timelines has to play out. But it only plays out for 1,000 years, and at the end of the 1,000 years, it's done with. And the only reason why it needs to play out is so that there is one final clash, right? In my courses, I talk about the cosmic experiment that was designed billions of years ago, right? In an effort to create a super race that was powerful enough to defeat all AI throughout the cosmos, right? So that needs to play out, and that will affect every level of reality. All right, what's that? Another question? 3 of them. Yeah, I'm answering them. Yeah, thank you. So that's what that means. So yeah, what's more important is that the positive organic timeline was preserved. Thank you so much, Grant Powell, for your super chat. And there is also Tabla Rosa. Thank you so much for your super chat, sister. Ishmael, where does Tartaria fit into all this? Can you do a show on what time about Tartaria and how they were able to delete such a civilization, and when Putin will release docs and pictures of it? Well, Putin has already started disclosing Tartaria documents and pictures. And in fact, I think they do have real visuals of what Tartaria looked like during its golden age, preserved in libraries in Russia. Now, regarding Tartaria, I mean, that's another deep rabbit hole, guys. Okay. I would have to probably do a whole presentation just on that. But I do believe that it did exist at one point. And just like many other golden ages, Tartaria was one of many civilizations that was created by the positive programs, by the Positive Brotherhood, the White Lotus, the Great White Brotherhood, the Melchizedek Order. We see this throughout history, right? Pockets of golden eras. The Cathars of France, for 200 years, they were living in harmony with the universe, right? Women and men were equal. It was decentralized, and everybody had abundance. And everybody was spiritual. Everybody was at a higher level of consciousness. So these civilizations did exist here and throughout history.
Oh my God. Oh boy.
All right.
Excuse me, I've been packing in case we have to evacuate. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah. So in the event that you guys are hearing noise in the background, she's just packing in case we need to evacuate. So, yeah, for those who are just jumping on, we're having some fires here in Sedona.
Very, very strong winds.
Thank you, Toho Shinki. Appreciate your super chat. Thanks, Ishmael, for everything. What dimension archangels are coming from? The 12th dimension. 10, 11, and 12 to be exact. 1 second. I'm trying to move my air here. It's so hot.
Oh.
And then the second part of your question, do some humans can reincarnate as one? Yes, they could. In fact, there is a good number of volunteers that are archangels incarnated in human form down here. It could be any one of you. So we do have them incarnated as well. Well, what they are is they're fractals. They're fractals of archangels, but once we undergo multi-dimensional integration, which is ascension, and we integrate with those other versions of ourselves, right? Oversoul. The oversoul is downloaded into the fractal. The fractal becomes the entire being in the flesh. That's what that means. So we're going to be able to see who's who when we begin to undergo multi-dimensional integration. Good question. Will our memories return? Absolutely, yes. Will Tiamat be restored? Well, Tiamat was Earth prior to reincarnating as Earth. Tiamat was the original Earth 4 million years ago, 4 times the size as big. A part of Tiamat became the asteroid belt, and the other half evolved into our planet today. So yeah, Tiamat was the original Earth. Catamarans, thank you so much for your super chat. Hi, what can I do? What can you tell us about someone with blood type O negative? Does it have something to do with the Jesus and Mary Magdalene bloodline? Many believe it is, especially O negative and AB negative and B negative. In fact, the entire Rh negative factor is believed to be different variations of the uncorrupted strain that was preserved by the Essenes. Yes. Will they be opening past the ice? You mean to have access to the other continents that are located within the Hollow Earth? Yes. Yeah, there will be a huge merging of us and the Hollow Earth, absolutely. And so therefore they will no longer be guarding the ice walls, which are really the portals to the other hidden continents that are located in the Hollow Earth. Does Enlil and Enki have the same Draco Queen mother? No. Only Enki. Enki's mother was Dramin, queen of the Draco. Enlil was pure Lyran Syrian Pleiadian, son of Anu, who was a Lyran Syrian, and whose mother was the Pleiadian queen. So Enlil, Zeus, who was also Zeus to the Greeks, was of the original guardian lineage of the Elohim. Enki was Poseidon, right, to the Greeks, same figure. Was the demiurge, was the one that downgraded us, was the one that created all the chimeras, the hybrids, the monsters, the Nephilim, and all that. You are so welcome. Thank you, Ishmael, for your answer. Very informative. You're so welcome. Yes, we will end with the prayer. Absolutely. Thank you for the reminder. You cried hearing that all the worlds are returning. Great happiness, overwhelmed by heart. Thank you. Yeah, that's what happens when we begin to time correct all the failed timelines and negative probable futures that led to degenerative races. That's what happens. When you begin to correct those, it's almost as if they never happened. Certain blood types must remain hidden from birth to now until the righteous time presents. I agree with that. Ishmael, is the DNA of plants and animals being fully activated like we are? Yes, everything is upgrading. Correct. Will Tartaria be restored? Yes. And so will the Cathars of France, and so will the kingdom of Septimania of Spain, of the original region that was ruled by the Visigoths during the times of the Roman Empire. These were the outside tribes, the outside kingdoms that were living in harmony, as well as the kingdom of the Nordic kingdom, right? Where Norse mythology comes from. The Saxons, the Anglos, the Vikings. So all of those civilizations will be restored. Thank you, Hope is Real, for your super chat. She says, was something called Ocean Wars? Well, there are different times in ancient times and even in current times where there were some skirmishes taking place in the oceans, yes, between oceanic civilizations. And I think I did a whole presentation on oceanic civilizations. And of course, those that wanted to use them or take them over. So yes, the ocean wars also existed. Now that's a different chapter in another rabbit hole that we could get into on another live, of course. But yeah, they did exist. I am seeing humans rising on herb-eating dinos and riding dragons. Also mermaids and sea snakes and dragons. Yeah, all of that is re-emerging with our reality, absolutely. I do have a super chat from Oscar Buenos. Thank you so much. He says, as I'm going through my awakening, I am learning a lot. When I learned about the Galactic Wars, it angered me a lot, like personally. Any idea why is that? Well, just like when we first discover about all the corruption, about all the poisons, about what they've been doing to the little ones, it is infuriating, right? I think it was David Icke who said, when we first wake up out of our programming and we learn the truth about what's really happening, it's like we're disgusted. Okay, so when you learned about the Galactic Wars, I mean, a lot of humans, ancestrals, all right, galactic humans suffered throughout the galactic history due to these wars. So it's painstaking, and the memories are horrid, right? And that explains why a lot of you have memories of imploded planets, huge catastrophes, floods, right? End of the world scenarios. I mean, all of this has occurred over and over and over throughout different cycles of time, guys. The Lion Gate 888, thank you for your super chat. The angels have woken me up to ask them to help with hurricanes in the past. They want to help, but we must ask. That is correct. Also, you had 2 super chats, 100 super chats that expired early in your presentation. I did. I don't know why they're not there anymore. I wish they were so that I could address them. I apologize for that. I don't know why that happens. I mean, I think, wouldn't it be reasonable if somebody puts a super chat that it remains there until I answer it? That's interesting. Ishmael, can beings maintain physical or light bodies in 7 density and above? Yes, they could. Physicality, or a subtle form of physicality, exists all the way up into the 9th dimension. Once you reach the 9th dimension, we go from what we call really subtle physical bodies to etheric, or what we call plasma bodies. So once we hit the 10th dimension, we become plasma beings. But everything up to the 9th D, there is a form of physicality. Yes, we do embody avatars. All right, so James Brink just answered why some of these super chats are erasing. Because he says that super chats expire based on money donation. Okay, I didn't know that. Thanks for sharing that. Ishmael, will we need to use restrooms in the 5D? Yes, we still need to do. Well, it depends. You know, some of us. What's that? Some of us that are depending on their light body to. Oh, I see. To be the dominant, you could say, aspect of our vehicle. Okay, it all depends on you, because in the 5D we're going to have the ability to also enjoy chocolate cake, a good meal, you know, things that we would enjoy with the physical body, but we would have to lower our frequency. And then if we don't want to lower our frequency, then we don't have to eat food. We don't have to go, you know, back to the bathroom. We become pure. It's almost like we live off of universal life force, if that makes any sense.
Can I answer that too?
Yeah, go ahead. What is your take?
I heard that in Agartha, which they're in fifth density already, they go number 2 and it just disappears in the air.
Okay, so she's saying that in Agartha, which is one of the inner Earth civilizations, who already exist in the 5D, when they go number 2, it just kind of disappears into thin air. There is no toilet. It comes out and it goes poof. I don't know where she got that from, but I just thought I'd share that.
From Agarthan.
Oh, from Agarthan. Okay, she got that from an Agarthan. Ishmael, will future babies remember their multidimensional selves? And when will we get our memories back? When we begin multidimensional integrating with higher aspects of ourselves, which is what we call the ascension, that's when we get our memories back. But to answer the first part of your question, yes. In the 5D and above, every child born is born as a multidimensional being. Isn't universal life force called prana? Yes, and it is also known as chi, right? It is also known as ki, ki, according to the Egyptians. It is also known as mana, right? Mana. Ishmael, why haven't I been feeling well and so tired? Well, a lot of you are, for multiple reasons. Well, first of all, the Schumann resonance has been pretty much spiking these days, right? Causing us to feel a lethargy, drowsy, or just wanting to sleep, right? Not motivated. The solar flares are amping. So, that really knocks us out. It makes us want to just lay in bed all day, right? Orvion, how you doing, brother? He says, hey, brother, how are you? Brother, my body has been feeling heavy, like I am being pulled down. Okay. Well, again, we're all experiencing different ascension symptoms because we're all different, okay? Everyone's going to experience different things, you could say. So that's not necessarily a bad thing, brother, right? Maybe you need to integrate more and anchor in more of that higher dimensional energy into the earth through your body. Maybe you need to ground more. Oh, yes. Ki, ka, prana. It is also known as the Force, according to Star Wars. Thank you for that reminder. Has reincarnation cycles stopped? Yes, they have. This is the final incarnation, guys, before multidimensional integration begins. Yes, this is where we graduate. That's correct. Earth is graduating. It's the graduating ground, what they call ground zero. Thank you. Ron Safried says, I've been having explosions of joy when I am in bed. Well, like I said, everybody's experiencing things differently. Does Valiant Thor still talk to President Eisenhower? I think President Eisenhower has passed, if I'm not mistaken. Let me look that up. That is a good question, but I don't think so. I think he currently is working with the real Trump, not the fake Trump, or the stand-in. I'm sorry. All right, let's see. Is Eisenhower still alive? Does anybody know that? Can you put in the comments? Eisenhower. No, he passed away. Yeah, he passed away, guys. He passed away in, when did he pass away? Or has he passed away? Does anybody know if Eisenhower has passed away? Yeah, I think he passed away. I mean, he would have been like way over 100 years if he didn't. Yeah, I would say, yeah, I think he passed away. So no, he's no longer in the picture. Oh, somebody say he died a long time ago. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Otherwise, he would have been like 128. No, I don't know. Yes, we need for all of us to pray for the rain to hit Sedona and Utah too. I heard Utah suffering from these wildfires. Somebody here says, I took your advice and I started exercising a month ago. I feel so much better. You guys are so welcome. Thank you guys for following the protocol. Ishmael, will 3D humans go to another 3D planet to work on their karma when Earth ascends? I hear many talk about it. Yeah, because, there will be no soul left behind. But from what I've gathered is that 3D humans that are just genuinely good people are going to have the opportunity of transitioning into the fourth density Earth reality, which is still much better than this world. But I was also told that there are a group of people that are going to be, you could say, transferring over to another 3D like Earth to continue their lessons until they master that, and then they will be part of an ascension whenever that happens for that Earth, if that makes any sense. All right, so he died in 1969. Oh, so that would make him about 135, 140. Oh, yeah. Thank you guys so much for the compliments. But again, this is probably one of my most abstract, out there presentations ever, where I had to tie in all these things to explain something, right? So I hope you guys watch this on the replay and just really try to digest all of this information. Oh, somebody's saying that Colorado also has fires. Well, this is the season for that, unfortunately, huh? Can you please explain, this is a question from Isabel. Can you please explain how the shutdown is going to affect Europe? Well, first of all, the culmination of the old empire, known as the Roman Empire, is the EU and NATO. So as I will be explaining in my next Alliance Update report, Russia is scheduled to go to war against the EU. All right, I'm going to leave you guys in suspense. All right, the EU and NATO are about to go down. That's all I can say. So, and that's going to liberate Europe, because all of those countries that were, duped into the European Union are are all working for the revived, or what they call the restored Roman Empire, which is the globalist. So yeah, pretty soon all that's going to be changing. Robert, thank you so much for the super chat. Can we program medbeds to kill hair follicles from the human body? I'm not sure about that. So if we don't want body hair, we can choose to.
I'm pretty sure you'll be able to program a lot of details.
Well, if you go and ascend into the 5D with a 5D avatar body, you consciously will be able to program yourself to not have any hair follicles other than here, right? Everything else clean cut shaven, including underneath your arms. Good question. But no, we won't really need any technology to program that. We could actually begin doing that by connecting with our body, by talking to our body. And one of the things that I teach in Ascension Basics is how to reconnect or reestablish a relationship with your body, your organs, your cells, your skin, your skeletal structure, so on and so forth. Some of you guys are saying body hair is super annoying. Are the fires harp tech? Ooh, that is a good question. I think that if anything, they would be done by DEWs, directed energy weapons. But there is a possibility because there is a huge underground facility that was being used by the cabal to traffic little ones where the fires are taking place in Sedona, which is in the mountain region. And so it is believed that, this could be initiated by the Alliance to kind of destroy and burn those facilities, right? After they've rescued the children. So that could be the case. Who knows?
Can I just say that I saw a video of proof that HARP was being used in the Venezuelan earthquakes. There was distortions in the sky with the colors and waves of colors that was not normal. So I think that was triggered, and they have that kind of weaponry at Area 51 where they can send those kind of lasers and DEWs wherever they feel like they can.
Yeah, there's a distinction between CERN, between generating artificial earthquakes or producing artificial earthquakes, tsunamis, or HARP, HARP, not CERN, my bad, HARP. And of course, DEWs, which are directed energy weapons. So those are two different things. The fires are caused by DEWs. The earthquakes are caused by HARP, correct?
Venezuela had it really bad.
Yeah, that could be the case that, some people are arguing that it is Mother Earth saying enough is enough. So I'm going to have to look into that, actually. Good question. What about the reptilians? Well, their time is up. Reptilians have to leave. And if they don't leave when the solar flash hits, they're going to be roasted. What's up? Oh, I almost forgot to mention, for those that are interested in detoxing their body from metals, there is the Folium, a natural way of getting rid of those nanobots, the radiation, which is good, right? We want to make sure that we are metal free during these times of transformation and energy absorption so that our bodies could experience a smooth and steady transition into the light body. So I always put the link in the description. And of course, I always pin it in the comments at the end of the live. All right, random questions now. Oh, we're getting pretty close to the mark where I should end this with a small prayer. What's this?
Power outages here too. The power outages could go out.
All right, so Arizona is preparing for impact. Something serious is unfolding across northern Arizona. When critical fire weather moving in, Coconino County has activated its emergency operations center as the pocket fire remains zero contained and firefighters continue battling steep, rugged terrain. So far, we are at 2,500 acres. At the same time, APS is preparing to shut off power for thousands of customers to help prevent additional wildfires from igniting during the expected high winds. Some customers could be without electricity for more than 24 hours as officials wait for dangerous conditions to pass before restoring power. Emergency shelters are opening. Water and ice distribution sites are being set up. Resources are being moved into place before the most dangerous conditions arrive. When officials begin taking steps like this before the peak of the threat, it is a sign they're preparing for a weekend that could become much more challenging. This is coming from the, what is it called? The press or what?
Michael Bradbury, Mr. BB 333.
Who's that?
A
reporter?
Like weather reports.
Okay, so this is coming from an independent weather reporter. Thank you for sharing that with us. All right, one more question, and then we're going to end this with the small meditation.